Hello, everyone. My name is Skip Watts, and I'm happy to be here with you to do the FAFSA line-by-line training. Essentially, I'm here to help educators and families alike feel really comfortable with the FAFSA. I'm here with my colleague and good friend, Timeka Ruffin. She and I are going to pass the baton, so to speak, between the two of us so that we have different voices throughout this presentation so that you're not just hearing me over and over again. Today, I'm working in conjunction with North Carolina First and FAFSA. I work with College Foundation in North Carolina, and we as CFNC are partnering with First and FAFSA to try to knock this FAFSA out for families that haven't yet completed it, because we want families to have access to all the funding possibilities that are available both in the state of North Carolina and through the federal government. So let's get started. Okay, we're going to be talking today about the 2021-2022 FAFSA, or free application for federal student aid. If students have yet to complete the 2021 FAFSA and they are currently in 12th grade and intending to go to college, it's a great time to start that process. It is not too late. So again, I want to introduce myself. I'm Skip Watts. I'm the 828 East CFNC Regional Rep. I cover a territory that ranges from roughly Boone down to Columbus. I'm here partnering today with my colleague Timeka, who handles the 704-980 area code, which is the Charlotte, Mecklenburg, and surrounding areas. Now, I'm going to run through an overview today. I'm going to discuss what the home view is, or what a parent and family will see when they start the FAFSA. We're going to be talking about the login view, the dependent student with parental data view. I'll be covering a lot of information about the independent student view. We'll be talking about the My FAFSA view, the student aid report view, or the SAR. We'll be talking again about the FAFSA corrections page, the Auto Zero EFC skipping program, special circumstances for families with unsubsidized loans. We'll be talking a little bit about homeless circumstances and some additional resources that counselors, educators, and families can find useful throughout this process. So moving forward to the home view, when a student logs onto the FAFSA, when they go to federal student aid or they go to FAFSA.gov, this is the page they're going to see. If they want to start the FAFSA, they simply click the Start Here feature. And if they want to go further as a returning user, they'll log in right here where I'm circling with my pointer. This is also available this year on a person's iPhone or Android. Essentially, there's an app that's available in all the app stores for the FSA My Student Aid app. And if a student chooses to upload that onto their phone, then they have the option to complete the FAFSA on their cell phone. However, I encourage all students that are considering using the FAFSA to complete, using their phone to complete the FAFSA, to strongly consider doing that in a secure wireless environment. I don't want any personal identifiable information to be wrongly handled by an outside third party. So moving forward, whether a student is if a student is on their PC starting the FAFSA, this is what the login page is going to look like. A family can choose to log in as a parent on the right, or a student can choose to log in by clicking the radio box that says I am the student on the left. Now from here, if the student's logging in, they're going to have to input their FSA ID, which functions as their electronic signature throughout the FAFSA process. And they're also going to have to input their FSA password. If a student's choosing to log in with their phone, this is what the same process is going to look like. They're going to again have to include their FSA ID and their FSA ID password in order to move forward in the My Student Aid app. Now, the login process for a parent is going to look exactly like I have on this slide. Instead of clicking the radio button for the student, they're going to click the parent. They're going to include the student's first name, the student's last name, the student's social security number, and their date of birth in an effort to get the FAFSA started. Both students and parents are going to have to accept this disclaimer, which is essentially accepting the fact that you're using federal data to complete the free application for federal student aid. And at this point, we can get started. The student's going to be presented with their first and last name in the upper left-hand corner. And from here, I want all attendees to pay close attention to the two different options for FAFSAs. If a student is currently a 12th grader, and they are hoping to enroll in college in August of 21, they'll need to do the 2021-2022 FAFSA using their parents' 2019 tax information. They will not want to start the 2020 FAFSA because that's for this current school year, and that wouldn't be applicable for next August. So again, make note that we want families starting the 2021-2022 FAFSA if it's a current 12th grader that's completing this process. And I should note that only 12th graders for the most part are going to do the FAFSA. So again, we want to start the 2021 process. Now, once the student starts the 2021-2022 FAFSA, they're going to have to create a save key. A save key is simply a key that a student can use to get back into the FAFSA and make corrections, or come back in at a later time and complete the process if they don't do it in one sitting. That save key is relevant for 30 days, and I recommend a student, once they complete that save key process, save that by writing it down in a planner or a day timer, or maybe just taking a picture of it and putting it in their phone so they have quick access to that information. After they complete that save key process, you're going to get this introduction page where you can actually click down and have accordion-like steps regarding the FAFSA process. So if you're concerned about how long it's going to take to complete the FAFSA, you can click on the caret that says, can I save, or how long will it take to complete the FAFSA? And when you click on that caret, an accordion is going to drop down with a bunch of different information about how long it'll take you to complete this process. Now, most students are going to be considered dependent for FAFSA-related purposes, which means they're going to have to file the FAFSA with their parents. Now, if a student is starting the FAFSA as a dependent, they're going to have to put in personal information regardless. So they're going to have to put in their social security number, their first, middle, last name, their date of birth. They're also going to have to include some other demographic information like their email account and their cell phone number. I strongly encourage students include their cell phone number so that they can keep quick contact with the federal student aid process. Students also going to have to input their address, and they're also going to have some eligibility and residency questions that they will have to answer for the state of North Carolina. From here, you're going to have just a little bit more information about residency. The FAFSA wants to ensure that the student is a resident of the United States and has been for at least 5 years. Students are going to have to input some education information as well. This could include information about how much high school education they have, how much post-secondary education they have, etc. This has to be completed before a student can move forward. Students are also going to have to indicate their registration with the selective service. The selective service essentially is in relation to a federal draft. If we were to impose the draft, students would have to register for that draft, the student selective service. If a student wants to take advantage of any federal or state financial aid funding, they have to register for the selective service, and they will do so by simply clicking the appropriate button at the bottom of this slide. Students are also going to have to input information about their driver's license. If they have one, they'll have to include their driver's license number and the state that their driver's license number is in. Students will have to indicate whether or not they've been in foster care, which you'll see in this slide. They'll also have to include information about their parents' educational history. Students will also have to input information about their high school. They'll have to input, well, they don't have to, but in order to find their high school in the listing through the federal student aid database, they're either going to have to put in their high school name, the city that it's located, or possibly the state. Once they do one of those three things, they'll be presented with a list of high schools, and they'll simply select the school that they attend, and that will be saved in their FAFSA. You can see that indicated here in slide 31. And select the specific school that they're graduating from, and then click next. Now, as we're moving forward, we have a search for colleges screen. This is a really important screen, and I want to just take a second to pause and make note that students can send their student aid report on the FAFSA to 10 different schools of their choice. I recommend that students select the school code for every school they could possibly attend and make sure that their FAFSA is sent to the appropriate schools. In order to do so, the student's going to have to acknowledge the state that they want to attend college in, the city, and if they know how to spell it, the school name. From there, they'll click search. They will then receive a list of schools that they can click and drag over to their colleges that they want their student aid report to be sent to. In this instance, it looks like the student is really bent on going to the University of Iowa. They only selected that one school for their student aid report to be sent to. So that's the only option they have. But again, I recommend that if we're working with families, that we include every school of interest, including the community college. And I stress a community college because a lot of students are choosing to attend a community college transferable associate program this year and transfer after they've completed that associate's degree into a 4-year school. If that community college has the student aid report, they can in turn offer the student a financial aid package or award. This is the housing plans page, and oftentimes when I'm working with families, this is something that not only I forget, but also oftentimes families forget to include as well. You have to identify how you're going to live on that campus of choice. In this instance, the student chose the University of Iowa, and they opted to live on campus. They would potentially have an off-campus option as well, but for whatever reason, the FAFSA mandates the completion of this slide before you can move forward. Student marital status, student single, obviously they're going to input that. If they are married, they will input the appropriate information and file the FAFSA accordingly. If the student has dependents, they're going to have to make sure to identify those dependents on the FAFSA. And there's also some additional dependency questions. Dependent students are going to answer no to all these questions. If they possibly could answer yes to one of these questions, they may be able to file the FAFSA independently. And that's a whole different topic, which Timeka will tackle in just a few minutes. Now, as far as student homelessness goes, that is something that's factored into the FAFSA. So there is a filter question in the student section of the FAFSA, and they're trying to determine whether or not a student would be eligible for McKinney-Vento benefits here. Now, dependent students, they're going to have to answer accordingly here if they have any special circumstances that that might be noted. In this particular slide, though, the student is acknowledging that they're going to provide information about their parents in order to complete the FAFSA. And a dependent student will have to input information about their parents to complete this process. That starts with identifying the parents' marital status and when they were married or remarried. They're also going to have to put in some personal information for the parent, like the social security number, their first, last name, their birth date, and their email address. Some additional information that'll be required for a second parent, if applicable. Parent state of legal residence is required as well on the FAFSA. And then this is the parent household information. It's important that parents pay special attention to this part of the FAFSA because it can really impact the expected family contribution or the family score on the FAFSA. So parents, make sure that you are inputting the appropriate number of dependents into this screen so that you can get the appropriate EFC when completing the process. Now, here's the parent tax filing status page. I like to point out that on this page, a parent has the option to link over to the IRS. If they choose to do so, they can link to the IRS and the IRS will auto-populate a lot of the financial aspects of the FAFSA. I think not only is the IRS data retrieval tool, or IRS DRT in financial aid speak, I think it's a wonderful tool for expediting this process, but it also limits potential errors from the parent or the student. So I like to stress to all educators attending, or if there's any parents, to definitely use that link to IRS feature at the bottom of this slide.
Hey, Skip, this is Melissa. Yes. Just real quick, your sound is getting crackly a bit. If you'll, I think when you're closer, it's a little bit better.
Okay, thank you very much. Is this better, Melissa?
That's better. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for pointing that out, and I apologize for that. Now, as far as the parent eligibility for the IRS data retrieval tool, this is where that screen comes into play. If a parent chooses to use this process, from here, they're going to link over to the IRS. and then they're going to follow accordingly with whatever they're prompted to input. Now, all of this information is also available on the FSA app to do over your phone. So if you choose to use your phone to complete the FAFSA, again, make sure you are in a secure wireless environment, and then you'll just need to follow the process to complete the IRS data retrieval tool on the FSA app through your phone. Now, when you complete this process, or when you link over to the FSA ID, excuse me, when you link over to the IRS data retrieval tool, you're going to have to acknowledge that you're leaving the FAFSA, and you'll have to click OK in order to do that. And once you've done so, you'll be on the federal government's IRS site. So from here, I think I went a few slides over where I was supposed to go. So I'm going to stop sharing and turn it over briefly to my colleague and friend, Timeka Ruffin. Timeka, I apologize for taking some of the wind out of your sails. I think I did like 5 of your slides. So
no, I was going to let you work. I was going to let you just go ahead and get it.
All right. Well, I'm turning it over to you now. So go ahead and share away.
Yeah, so me and Skip have sort of control issues. So we're controlling our own slides, right? So that's why we're switching here. And don't judge us. I know counselors have control issues too, so don't judge. Let me hold on just a second, because hopefully this will come up for you. Can you see my screen, Skip?
Yes, Timeka, I can.
Okay. Hold on, it's starting from the beginning. We don't want that. Hold on.
Yeah, we were on slide 48.
I know. I'm sorry, I had it on 48 too.
I messed you up. I got so excited about this FAFSA stuff.
I mean, you are just so excited. I love it. So this is where we were. So you know that STIP parents are able to go ahead and get their information from the IRS. So this is what it looks like once they leave the FAFSA site and go to the IRS site. One of the things that you'll see is that when they click there, some of the parents or whoever are doing it, they're going to see that some of their information is already plugged in. And that's because that information is coming directly from the FAFSA. So once they click over, even though they're leaving the FAFSA site, because they put in some basic information already, some of that information will already be there for them. So you can see, like with this student or parent, some of the information is already filled in. And then they'll have to fill in whatever's not filled in. I'll make sure that people know that they have to put it in exactly as it is on their tax return. If they don't, it may give them an error message that we could not retrieve your tax return. So the information that they're putting in for their name, social security number, and all of that, it has to be exactly how it is on their tax return. So that's key to being able to retrieve that information successfully. And then you'll see on here, this is just some more general information. And after they do that, they hit submit, and it will let them know that their information is being transferred from the FAFSA now to, from the IRS to the FAFSA. What I'm showing you here is that this is what it looks like when a parent starts the financial section. So you'll see up here, we're kind of under the financial section. They'll get a message. So they won't actually they'll get the question. So it asks like, what is your adjusted gross income? There won't be a box for them to actually put anything in. It will say it was transferred from the IRS. So that's what they see. They don't actually get to see what that dollar amount is. It just says this message, it's been transferred from the IRS, so they can just go on to the next one. So they don't have to look for, oh, I can't find where I put this. It's already been done for them. The other thing is, and I want to show you another example of that they do have to put on here that the information was, it shows that it was transferred from the IRS, but there are some questions, of course, that cannot automatically be transferred from the IRS. So this is one of those where the first question, yes, it was automatically transferred, but the second question, they actually had to go in and manually put yes or no if they filed a Schedule K-1. So obviously this person must have indicated or filed a certain type of tax return. So they're asking them some additional questions about that. So that's one that they would actually have to answer. If the parent is not sure, so say for instance, for this question right here, if the parent was not sure, there's always going to be this question mark over here. So that's exactly for the people that I have a question, I don't understand what this is. Once you click on the question mark, it expounds and explains exactly what they're asking. And this is for every single question that's on the FAFSA. So they'll always have this question mark to be able to kind of explain what a question is exactly asking them. And then this is just showing you what it would look like if a parent chose, of course, that they were not going to use the IRS retrieval tool, but now they're just having to manually enter in their financial information. This could be for a couple of reasons. This could be because the parent chose not to use the retrieval tool, but as Skip mentioned, we encourage families to do that because it just makes it easier. But there are actually some tax statuses that will not transfer. So a parent may really genuinely decide that they want to try the IRS retrieval tool, but because of a certain tax status, or again, because they did not enter their information in exactly as it appeared on their tax return, they were unable to get their taxes retrieved. In that case, they would have to come in and manually put in their information. What I do want you to make note of on here, because this is a question I'm getting a lot from parents as we're talking to them, is that some parents are saying, well, I didn't file my 2019 taxes. What do? I haven't filed taxes in a couple of years, whatever that is. They have to put in tax information. So one of the things that they could do is that they could estimate their information from 2019, right? So you'll see over here where it has income estimator. This is for those people that did not actually file a tax return, but they know that 2019 tax return information is required in order to submit this FAFSA. They can do an income estimator. I do usually tell families that if you're working with a family, that they probably want to have a blank tax return somewhere nearby, just so that they can kind of estimate themselves what some of the answers would be to the questions. But there is an income estimator that kind of helps them as they're going through this. There probably will be flagged from the financial aid office. So you can go ahead and let them know, because they're doing an income estimator. The financial aid office will probably select them for verification. So you can go ahead and get them prepared for that. But they do have the option to do an income estimator if they have not filed their tax return. And then, of course, this is just showing you again that they're going to go ahead and manually enter in their information. This is just asking about information from their, the wages. And this is why it's so important for them to have their tax return, because it makes it easier, because you see up here is asking them for specific line information. If you don't have a blank tax return at least nearby, you don't even know what they're talking about. So it makes it even more difficult for them to actually complete the FAFSA. So again, try to have the tax return, or make sure they have the tax return nearby, so that they can go ahead and know exactly what they're asking about or what they're referring to. You'll see on here, if there's two parents, they put two parents' information. Obviously, if there's not another parent, you can usually just click next if it's a single parent. But if for some reason it won't allow them to do that, they can put in 0. So for parent 2, so if it's a single parent and it won't allow them to hit next because of the fact there's no income here, they can just put 0 and they'll know if it does that. So the other part of the FAFSA during the income section is that after they are kind of going through those tax questions, it will start to try to figure out and make this application easier. So everybody complains about how the FAFSA asks so many questions, but it doesn't do that for everybody. There's actually like a simplified test that they do in the middle of them asking questions. So they're kind of going through here, and it asks them on here, what type of tax return did they file? They notice that they, filed a certain tax return. They will answer a question on here, did they file a Schedule 1? And so this is one of those things that helps them figure out this person does not really, we don't need to ask them a lot of questions because they didn't do a Schedule 1, or yes, they did do a Schedule 1, so we need to ask them some more questions. So they would answer yes or no. If a parent doesn't know that, again, the question mark on the side. This question right here is probably going to be really critical for this year, especially, and probably the couple of years going forward. It asks them, are you a dislocated worker? Most people put no because they don't know what it is, or they put don't know. This is important because it asks them what a dislocated worker is. It gives you the definition once you click on it, but basically someone who is no longer employed. So they were employed, they got laid off, or they haven't been working, or any of that. And again, you'll be able to click here and explain all of that here. That's going to be critical because if they answer yes, that they're a dislocated worker, it's going to skip a lot of questions for them. So I usually make sure that, if you're talking to parents or know a student or parent has lost their job or employment, to definitely click on yes, dislocated worker, so that they won't get asked as many questions as they would under this financial section. Another portion that will come right after the dislocated worker, because again, they're trying to make this form easy for them, is they ask them, did they receive any of these benefits? If a person was to check that they received any of these benefits, there will be questions that they will not get. So if they answer or check any of these, they won't get any in certain questions asked to them. They won't get any asset questions asked to them. There'll be certain things that they will not receive. So it's really important that if a family or student does receive any of this, that they go ahead and click one of those there. Again, if they don't know what it is, they can click on the question mark here. This is just, again, just showing you some of the information. If they're putting it in manually, they'll ask them, some additional information, line information from their tax return. If they don't know it, question mark again is what they would put. They're also going to ask them, do they receive any of the following items? And so a lot of times they might ask them about combat pay. They're going to ask them if they have any education credits that they claimed on their tax return from the year prior. They'll ask them about some untaxed portions of IRAs if they did that portion. And so if they don't get any of that, I would definitely let them just leave it at 0. They do have it now where zeros show up automatically in here, but just leave it like that if they don't have any of these particular benefits they're asking them about. And then some of the other questions that they get, and which are really important for them to answer, are going to be questions about child support paid, if they paid any child support, if they had any income that they earned from some type of program, if they are in college themselves as a parent. They're going to ask them that. So they would just go in and answer those questions. Again, if they don't know or you don't know if you're helping them, click on the question mark. When most people know, if they're receiving or having to pay any of this stuff, they know that they're doing it. And then they also have some additional questions. So these are specifically about if they receive child support. So there's a question about whether or not you had to pay any. And there's also a question about whether or not you receive it. And they would put that amount there. There's also some information in here specifically kind of mostly for military and clergy that are going to ask questions about any benefits that they receive. And they're kind of putting estimates. If they don't know the exact dollar amount, they could definitely put in an estimated amount for any of these. But they would definitely want to put all of that information in all of the boxes that are listed here. So one of the things, this is one of the questions that people get if they answer any of those simplified tests. So remember I was saying if they received any of those benefits, if they indicated that they were a dislocated worker, it's going to ask them, do you want to skip questions about your assets? It does not ask everybody this question. So depending on if a person puts no, they're not a dislocated worker, if they don't receive any of those benefits, they're going to get asked asset questions. But for those people that do list that they did receive any of those benefits, they will get asked, do they want to answer any questions about their assets? And they can really say no, that they don't want to answer any questions because they know that they probably don't have a lot of assets. So it's okay to say no for those people if they do not want to put in any information about their assets, because they probably don't have much to really put there. You'll also see on here that because you kind of put on here that you, for this particular student, I want you to be able to see that the students will also get the same questions. So I'm not going to go through exactly the same lines. The students' lines are listed exactly how the parents are. So they're asked the same financial questions that the parents are asked. Most students probably have not filed a tax return, and that's okay if they have not, because I think right now the level is about if you earn less than $12,000 a year, you're not required to file a tax return. So most students are not going to be required to file, but if they file, that's great. They can go ahead and put that information there. And they can also try to link from the IRS if they want to choose that option. So if they do choose that, they'll get the option to link from the IRS as we showed you before, and they'll get the same message that they're leaving the website and they're going to the IRS website. But most students can get away with just manually putting in their information. And this is just showing you a student who is just manually going to put in their information for their income and kind of estimate what they've done. The same thing for the students. If they did work, but they didn't file a tax return, it still may be good for them to get like a blank tax return or have it nearby just to kind of generally answer the questions that they're asking them on here. And the student is doing that. They did file a little tax returns. They were working a little bit, so they did enter in some of the information from their tax return. So this is just showing you them answering the questions. And again, seeing how detailed it is and how specific it is to them answering the questions exactly as they are from their return. And they're also going to get asked some of the same questions about any of the benefits that they received, or if they're receiving any of these credits or deductions. Most students are not. So especially in high school age, so they're going to put zeros in for all of this. And then you'll see the same thing. Some of the students may be paying, if you have a high school student, they may be paying child support. They may be receiving child support. So they would answer those questions. But most of the other questions that are up here are not really relevant to high school students. So they would put in zeros for these as well. And then this is just showing you again more of the questions that they're going to put zeros in, because they're probably not receiving any kind of housing allowance or anything like that. Although some of them, could be ministers at that age, they could be receiving some benefits. But one of the ones that we do see, some of the students may have, if they have any kind of veteran benefits that they're receiving, or disability benefits they're receiving from being a veteran. Most of them probably are not, but they could, depending on their parents' status in the military. So they could enter in of that, but for most students, they're just hitting straight zeros through most of this information. But again, if they are unclear, they can just click on that question mark. And then the same thing with the students. The students, they do want to know whether or not, so the students really aren't asked a question about whether or not they would like to enter in questions about their assets, because they do want to know, do you have a savings or checking account? Do you have any investments or anything like that? And one of the reasons why they ask students those questions is because sometimes parents do try to hide things under students' names, right? And so they do want to make sure that, do you have any other kind of investment accounts in your name? So typically students aren't really given the option to be able to skip asset questions. They typically are going to be asked to answer those questions, even though for a lot of them it's probably zero, but some of them may have some assets that they do have in their name. And then they'll click on here, they'll be asked whether or not they want to, whether this was prepared by someone else. So after they've answered the parents' financial questions, the student financial questions, they're starting to get to the sign and submit section. We didn't mention this before, but definitely pay attention to these bars up here. This is how you know you're getting to the end, right? So you're starting to feel like, okay, we're almost there. Once you kind of get to this section, it asks you, no, I'm not the preparer. So they would put no one else prepared this for them. Something that they added in here that's, I guess, fairly new for the FAFSA is that they did put in this FAFSA summary. It's a good thing because students get a chance to go in and review, and parents to review all the information before they actually hit submit. It's a bad thing because some students feel like this is the end. So they just kind of briefly go through here and say, I'm done with my application. I don't have to do any more. The FAFSA summary is just kind of their last chance to be able to go through and look and make sure all of the information is correct. If it's highlighted, that means they can go back to that section and correct it. If it's not highlighted, obviously it means that they cannot go back in and correct it. It would have to be corrected by someone at the financial aid office. But if it is highlighted, they can go back and correct something that was incorrect. And again, that's for the parent or the student. So they'll get this FAFSA summary of all the questions that they answered, and it'll go through the whole sections of the FAFSA form. And then once they do that, it gets to the sign and submit. So if a student has not gotten to this portion, then they will get that message, or they will see that they haven't actually submitted their FAFSA. So once you get here, this is when they enter in the FSA ID that they register for at the beginning, or they can register for it at this portion, but most students register for it at the beginning. And this is where the parent and the student would need to sign. What they'll also have to do is agree to a statement just saying that they agree that all the information that they put on here was correct, and that they agree that that's all correct. So they just click on agree and they go on to the next one. And then the student would proceed to sign it with their FSA ID so that they can sign the application. If a parent or if a student use that transfer data, so if they transfer their information directly from the IRS, that some of the parents may not be required to put in an FSA ID. And I've kind of had some counselors and parents to ask me about it. Well, the parent didn't have to put in their FSA ID. If they use that IRS retrieval tool, because they know that that income information is completely correct, they don't really need for them to sign to say that it's correct because they've already submitted their tax return. So there may be some instances where the parent is not asked for their FSA ID to sign it. They may just be able to go directly on and it will say that the parent has signed it already. So that may be something that you'll see that's not unusual with the FAFSA application. But once both of the parent and the student sign the application, they both agree that the information is correct, then they'll automatically say, but I will say this is what shows up for those parents that, they have an FSA ID and it does not work, or the student has one and it does not work. They are given the option to be able to print a signature page or just submit it without signatures. I would at least encourage the parents that if for some reason or a student, if their FSA ID does not work, that they print out a signature page and mail it in. They can submit it without signatures, but that's just going to prolong the process because that means the financial aid office will get it without signatures, and then they're going to require that they print out the signature page and submit it to them. So I would go ahead and have them to at least print out the signature page and sign it and mail it in if they're having problems with their FSA ID. And then again, it's just showing them here that they both successfully signed it, so they know that it's been signed. And this is what students and parents want to see at the end. They don't want to say they got to the FAFSA summary and that was it. They want to see confirmation page and they want to say congratulations, whatever their name is. That's how you know that it's at the end. That's how you know that they have successfully submitted their application. And it kind of just, again, gives them an overview. It should give them that estimated family contribution, which a lot of parents and students want to know. Well, the financial aid office said that my estimated family contribution was this. Where did they get this from? It comes again from that confirmation page, and it will also be on the student aid report, which will show you exactly what that looks like for the student. If a student does decide to do it on the app, this is what the summary looks like. So again, right before they're about to submit their signatures, they will get a summary, and on the app, it looks like this. I actually like the app version. I think it's a lot more user-friendly for students to be able to go through easily because they're used to being on their phone, but this is what the FAFSA summary looks like for them. They'll also have to agree to the agreements, and this is what it looks like for them on the app version. And then they also get a confirmation page. And again, remember, if they just let the student and the parent know if they don't see that congratulations with their name on it, they have not gotten to the end. And so this gives them the confirmation for all of that. And I just wanted to show you on here for the students who because we're just assuming that a student is living with their parent and they can put the parent information. If a student is unable to or does not want to provide student parent information, or they were able to answer one of the questions that says that they do not have to provide parent information on here, they can say no, that I do not want to answer questions about my parent. They can absolutely say that and leave it up to the financial aid office to make a decision. So this is what they see right before they get to the parent section. So again, if you're working with students who are unable to get information from parents, they can simply answer, I don't want to answer questions about my parent. And that's what that will be right before the financial question. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over back over to Skip so he can show you kind of what it looks like for the FAFSA views. So the student has hit submit, which will hopefully some of your students have already done. And then they will be able to see what the views are going to look like.
Real quick, we have a couple of questions in the chat before Skip starts. There's a question about what happens if a parent does not have a social security number?
Yeah, that's a good question. I know that, so if a parent does not have a social security number, they can put in all zeros.
Okay, and then there's a question about a student, which form they should fill out. So class of 2021 should be filling out what form versus class of 2022?
Okay, yes. So the seniors right now are filling out the FAFSA for the 2021-2022 school year because they'll be enrolled in college for 2021-2022. So that's what the seniors are filling out. And
then the class of 2022 won't start filling out the FAFSA until this coming October.
Right, that's correct.
October 1st.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, well, I'm going to take over real quick. Timeka, that was amazing. I learned a bunch there, but I have to comment. I don't have control issues. I've been happily married to a beautiful lady who has control issues, and I live within that.
So maybe it's me, Skip. Maybe I had the control issues.
Maybe. I'm not pointing any fingers. But let's talk a little bit about the FAFSA. We're running out of time, so I'm going to make this pretty concise, but please ask questions in the chat if you have any that come to mind. The My FAFSA View is a navigational tool for applicants when they're accessing the FAFSA.gov site. It provides all kinds of information like the actions required, whether or not you need to start over, if the application processed successfully. You can view your student aid report, which is really important. You can view your corrections history. You can create a shareable file if you want. And all this is available in the next couple slides. I'll explain a little more. So getting started here, if you've completed the FAFSA, you know, you're going to start the 2021-22 FAFSA for students that are graduating currently. They're going to see, you know, information about what FAFSA they completed, if they want to do a renewal, if they want to start a new FAFSA. A FAFSA renewal would be for a student that is maybe starting their second or third or fourth year in college, not the person that's going directly into college from the high school. Some more information, you can see here that when the application is processed and there's some kind of action required, the student's going to get a pretty obvious indicator in that My FAFSA page. They're going to see here that an action is required. Usually that's like a signature or some kind of mistake was made in the reporting of the assets or financial information. If perhaps the student's trying to complete the FAFSA and they haven't completed it, they're going to get this not submitted screen. That's simply going to tell them that they need to go back into the FAFSA and hit the continue button to complete this process and submit the FAFSA in order to be eligible for federal and state financial aid opportunities. Now, if the process has gone smoothly and everything worked out successfully, the student's going to receive this message that the FAFSA was processed successfully, and they can move forward if they so choose. It's going to look similar, but a little bit different if the family's using that FSA ID app on their phone, but they're going to have the same option to start a new FAFSA or to go back and make corrections. They're going to have additional text if they didn't submit information. In this instance, it's going to pop up on the phone in a yellow kind of like emergency message. In this instance, it's saying something wasn't submitted, you got to go back in there and complete the FAFSA. Once you do so and you hit submit, you're going to get a processing option, which you can see here in the middle of this screenshot. It could take up to 3 business days to process a FAFSA. It could go much quicker. It just depends on the federal government, and I have no control over that. Once the FAFSA has been processed successfully, the student is going to receive that messaging on their phone, and then they're going to have the opportunity to review their student aid report. Student aid report is an option that a student can take advantage of if they go down past that processed successfully window and they select the first blue prompt down below in that rectangle that I have in red. They'll collect, view, or print the student aid report. At that point, the student family can see every data point that they input into the FAFSA. So if you just want to go over the FAFSA, or your families want to go over the FAFSA to make sure everything's accurate, this is where they can do that. Again, this can be printable if a family so chooses. And again, it's just going to detail everything that the student input into the FAFSA. It's also going to offer information about what kind of awards students will be eligible from the federal and state government. Now, the My Student Data download, it's real similar. It's on that same process successfully page, but in this instance, the student's going to scroll down a little further. They're going to click on the create a shareable file. And if they choose to do that, this is going to create a really easily understandable student aid report that they can share with other entities if they so choose. Now, once they've completed that My Student download, this is what they're going to see. They're going to have all kinds of different options to submit or print out different kinds of information. It's pretty simple. It's pretty straightforward. I'm going to go ahead and stop my share real quick and turn it over to Timeka, who's going to kind of round out the circle and finish us off.
Can you see my screen?
Yes, I can.
Okay, good. I'm sorry. So one of the things you'll see up here is that this is what it looks like when the student has their student aid report. So most of the students will have, or most of the parents will be able to log back in to see their student aid report. They should have gotten an email or some type of notification that says this is your student aid report. This is what most of your seniors are probably getting around this time. But if they did not get an email notification, they can simply just go back to the FAFSA.gov website and log back in, and they will get that My FAFSA view that Skip was just showing you, and they can click on the school year that they're doing it for, which all seniors should have 21-22. And then they will see a menu that looks like this, where they can actually view or print their student aid report. So this is where they can get access to it if, again, they can't find it in their email, they don't see it anywhere else. The student aid report is just a summary, again, for them to be able to see everything that was listed on their FAFSA. As a counselor or anyone that's working with students, if you wanted to be able to see their student aid report, to kind of see what was on there, if they have a crazy EFC or estimated family contribution, you're trying to figure out how is that possible that they have that number, this is a way for you to go back in and view and see everything that they put on their FAFSA. So students are able to kind of print out, or essentially the FAFSA form or the results are all the answers from their FAFSA form. So that's what the student aid report is. And then students are also able to download it. So if you as a counselor wanted them to share it, because obviously some of you are not seeing your students face to face, but you want them to share a copy of their student aid report. If they log back on again to the FAFSA site, click on that school year, underneath in the middle, you'll see that same menu where they can print their student aid report, but they can also create a shareable file. So if they wanted to be able to share some portions of their FAFSA with you, they can create that. It'll ask them where they want to have that file sent to, and it can be sent to you as a counselor. So a student would just need to log back on to the student aid site. And just so you'll see here, this is just showing you there are some students who are not going to be asked a lot of questions on the FAFSA form, so they do have an automatic zero sort of method for them to be able to do this. I always tell people when you're filling out the FAFSA, all the questions are based on a skip logic. So there are definitely questions that people do not see. And they have that for some families to automatically generate a zero EFC for them. So there will be lots of questions they do not have to answer. It's going to depend on whether or not they filed a certain tax return, whether or not they're receiving certain benefits, and also whether or not the amount that the income was that they reported will automatically give them an EFC or an estimated family contribution of zero. And this is just showing you some of the questions that those students are given that other people are not given. So that means they pretty much will skip all of that. For the students who are having special circumstances and are not providing parent information, just know that they are able to choose the option that I'm not unable to provide parent information, but they will also be given this message that says that, yes, you don't have to put in parent information, but do know that the financial aid office, there's going to be certain things you will not get. So they will not get an estimated family contribution at the end. They will not get certain information on their student aid report that another student would that did have their parent information on there. It's also going to let them know that they're probably going to be selected for or going to have to go through the special circumstances process. So again, a student would put on there, I'm not going to provide parent information, and it gives them all of these messages just to be sure that, are you sure that you want to go through this? If the student is sure that, yes, I still want to go through this, I have a special circumstance, they're just going to click here and it will completely skip the parent section. But if it says, if the student has changed their mind and say, I don't have a special circumstances, just looking at some of these reasons up here, then it will go back to them entering in the parent information. So the students are given a message before they are skipping the parent section, just to let them know that there will be more information that needs to go to the financial aid office. Once they get that message, they choose to do that, it skips again the parent section and goes straight to the student section. So they are not asked any of the questions again about that. For the homeless students, I just want you to be able to see here that for those students who are considered homeless, if they answer yes, I am homeless or self-supporting, this is what they see. They will get a next questions that asks, has there been anyone who has pretty much identified you? What group has identified you as homeless? So it could be someone from their high school, it could be another organization, but they would need to click one of these to confirm them answering that they are indeed homeless. For some of them, maybe they haven't gotten any confirmation from any of these groups. They can click on none of the above. If they do click on none of the above, then they are going to be given some more questions as far as, are you sure you want to submit your FAFSA without having any kind of documentation for having put on here that you don't have none of the above information that someone has indicated that you are homeless. They give them a message and say that they're probably going to be selected for some type of process from the financial aid office to require more documentation. So if a student checks none of the above, they will be asked for information from the financial aid office. The student agrees to that, and they're going to go ahead and they're just going to answer student questions. They will not get parent questions if they indicate that they are homeless on here, and it gives them a message to let them know that. So I wanted you to be able to see that they are given that chance. They also do, and it's kind of redundant on the form, but they ask them again, are you sure you don't want to provide parent information because they didn't indicate that they got confirmation from any kind of group. So they are given that chance if they want to proceed, and it just goes on and asks them about their household size, which it would just be one because it's just them. So just wanted you to be able to see very quickly what it would look like from a student who did indicate that they are homeless, so they don't have a parent at home. For additional resources, of course, you can always go to the studentaid.gov website because that's where a lot of the information will be as it relates to the FAFSA and the form itself. Definitely go to the studentaid.gov site. On the CFNC website, we do have lots of FAFSA videos, so be sure that you go to the CFNC website under educational professionals. That's where we have a lot of resources for you to be able to see some FAFSA videos and FAFSA information and kind of sheets that you can share with families on our website. So if you haven't gone there, definitely do that. We also have tons of resources on our YouTube channel. As April mentioned before, these are all the regional representatives. So if you're not aware of who your regional representative is, be sure that you go to the educational professional section, and it will look just like this to be able to find it. This is also where you find our Spanish services coordinators for our state, who are amazing. So if you are working with Spanish speaking students, you have questions or concerns, their information is also listed under the educational professional section, where all of our other representatives for the state are listed as well. And of course, follow us on all our social media pages. And if you have any questions, I'll kind of turn it over here. If you have any questions, of course, after today, you know how to reach out to us. And then you also know that we're available to kind of help you in any way. I didn't know if you have any more questions. Melissa, I'm sorry, I'm kind of speeding through. I knew we had like a time frame we were trying to keep.
No worries, no worries. There aren't any more questions in the chat, but folks who are still with us, if you do have questions, feel free to send them in to me and I can help get those answered for you. Thank you everyone for hanging in with us. Sorry about the technical difficulties. Lessons learned on our inaugural webinar here. Huge thank you to Skip and Timeka for sharing your expertise today. There's a question, will we be sharing slides? Yes, that will all come in an email from me tomorrow, recording slides, all the good stuff, and it'll be in a Google folder that y'all will have access to. So again, Skip, Timeka, thank you so much. Y'all are awesome. Wonderful information. I hope it was helpful to everyone who joined us. And we will follow up tomorrow. Thank y'all so much. Take care. Bye-bye.